From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Well, good morning and all of the shushing, and this is so wonderful. I'm Carla Hayden, and I am very fortunate because I am the rather new Librarian of Congress. And so we're so, yes. I know. And just think about what I get to do as Librarian of Congress. I get to be here with special people and to help you think about special books. So we're so glad you're here. And also, I want to give a special thank you to the people who are making sure that we all get these books. And that's Everybody Reads. Could you just stand up for a minute? Thank you for helping to make this possible. Now, got a quiz question. This is a special month. Do you know what month this is? Okay. Very good. Women's rights, women's history, and we just celebrated women's rights. That's right. And guess what? The reason why we were all going like this is because we have one of the most important and influential women in the United States, even the world, right here today.
Thank you.
Now, I'm sure you know what she does. She sits on the highest court in the United States. So, what?
It was the Supreme Court.
It's a Supreme Court, and it's right across the street.
Yeah.
I know, right across from the library. And do you know what they're called? The judges. Justices. Well,
Yeah.
great. Have you all been practicing? Okay, because the name of the book is Dissent. So we have yes and no and all that. We have a great author here today as well. And she just wrote a wonderful picture book called I Dissent. And you just heard do you know what dissent means?
I agree.
Or not? That's when,
I admire.
You can agree, but you don't agree. It means that some people agree and some people don't. And Justice, if I get this wrong, please correct me. But we are delighted that Miss Levy is here, who wrote the book, and she's going to interview the lady that we're going to give a big hand to, Chief Justice. Oh. Sorry. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Thank you, Dr. Hayden, for that lovely introduction. I'm so happy to be here for several reasons. To share this space with someone who, to me, is a true hero. To also be here and spend some time with you students in the Young Readers Center. And to be here at the Library of Congress, the largest library in the world. Did you know that? Where I did research for this book, I Dissent, and I've done research for other books that I've written. And I'm still doing research for my book that's going to come out, let's see, you all are in 3rd grade, that will come out when you are in 5th grade. That's how long sometimes it takes to get a book published. As you know, I wrote this book about this very accomplished person next to me, who holds one of the highest offices in our land, and I focused the book on how she has been disagreeing with things ever since she was a little girl. Now, there's no disrespect in this focus, because as you'll see, Justice Ginsburg example shows that disagreeing doesn't make you disagreeable, and in fact, that we can make change in the world one disagreement at a time. So I'm going to read some pages from my book So you can see how Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg started out as Little Ruth Bader. Then I'll ask Justice Ginsburg some questions that I think you'll want to hear the answers to, and then you'll have the chance to ask some questions of your own. So I'm going to start with I Dissent. I Dissent, the book is called. Ruth Bader Ginsburg Makes Her Mark. You could say that Ruth Bader Ginsburg's life has been one disagreement after another. Disagreement with creaky old ideas, with unfairness, with inequality. Ruth has disagreed, disapproved, and differed. She has objected. She has resisted. She has dissented. Disagreeable? No. Determined? Yes. This is how Ruth Bader Ginsburg changed her life and ours. In 1940, Little Ruth's neighborhood was vibrant with immigrants. People from Italy, Ireland, England, Poland, Germany, Jews from Russia, like Ruth's father, Nathan Bader. People from different cultures with different holidays, foods, and traditions. But in all these families in Brooklyn, New York, and in families everywhere, one thing was pretty much the same. Boys were expected to grow up, go out in the world and do big things. Girls were expected to find husbands. Ruth's mother disagreed. Celia Amster Bader thought girls should have the chance to make their mark on the world. So she took Ruth to the library. On the shelves were stories of girls and women doing big things. Ruth read about Nancy Drew, girl detective. She discovered Amelia Earhart, daring aviator. She learned of Athena, goddess of Greek myths. Here were independent girls and women taking charge. Ruth read her way into this world. Around her, the sweet smell of books blended with savory aromas from the Chinese restaurant that was downstairs. Delicious. A girl could be anything. Sometimes Ruth and her parents took car trips out of the crowded city. As they drove past a hotel in Pennsylvania, Ruth saw a sign. No dogs or Jews allowed. This is how it was in those days. Hotels, restaurants, even entire neighborhoods announcing no Jews, no colored, no Mexican, whites only. Ruth and her family were Jewish. This was prejudice, pure and simple. Now it was Ruth's turn to disagree. She disagreed by never forgetting how it felt to read such words. She never forgot the sting of prejudice. In elementary school, Ruth was excellent in some classes and less excellent in others. Her favorites were English, history, and gym. In those, she did well. But then there was handwriting. Back then, teachers told left-handers they should try to write with their right hand. Ruth's left-handed penmanship was so bad she earned a D on the penmanship test. She cried. Then she objected. Then she protested. Pardon me, I want to get in every single one of those words. She protested by writing with her left hand from that day forward. And it turned out she had quite nice handwriting. That's what I'm going to read. And from there, Justice Ginsburg, went on to disagree, resist, persist, not concur, and dissent, which means disagree, and dissent her way into big things. Also to agree, support, lift up, and defend the ideas she believed in. She went to college. She became a lawyer, a professor of law, a judge, and a justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, the highest court in our nation. Justice Ginsburg, I know you didn't sail through all these accomplishments without challenges. So I do want to talk to you about your school days and some of those challenges. But first, let's make sure everyone understands the job that you do today. So will you tell these students something about the role of the Supreme Court, how it works?
What does the Supreme Court do? The Supreme Court is the highest court in the land to decide questions involving federal laws. That means laws passed by Congress or the Constitution of the United States, which is our highest law. And if any law passed by Congress is in conflict with the Constitution prevails. So our job is to say what the national law is. Sometimes Congress writes statutes that are very dense, not easy to understand, and people disagree about what they mean. So we interpret statutes, laws passed by Congress, and our highest law, the U.S. Constitution.
And there are 9 justices normally, and there is a Chief Justice, currently Chief Justice Roberts. So does the Chief Justice decide what the decision will be, and the rest of you just go along with him?
The way it works is this. We spend lots and lots of time, hours and hours, reading about the cases that are then argued before the court. We start sitting this Monday coming up. We'll sit for 2 weeks. And on Wednesday, we'll all meet together to talk about the cases that were argued on Monday. And then we meet on Friday to talk about the Tuesday and Wednesday cases. We go around the table. The Chief Justice speaks first, but he has only 1 vote, as the rest of us do. We go around in seniority order. And when each one of us has said how we think the case should come out, sometimes we talk across the table. When all of us have given our opinion on how the case should come out, if the Chief Justice is in the majority, he will say who writes the opinion. And if he's not in the majority, then the most senior justice, who is nowadays most often Justice Kennedy, will assign the opinion. And then we write opinions. That's the biggest difference, I think, between the way courts work and the way the legislature, Congress, works. If you're a member of Congress, you can just vote yay or nay, yes or no, but we can't do just that. We have to write our reasons for every decision we reach.
And that is why we end up with volumes and volumes of written opinions from the Supreme Court, and that creates part of our law. Now, let's go from the court back to your school days. We just heard that your neighborhood in Brooklyn was full of immigrants and children of immigrants. Your father was an immigrant from Russia. What type of work did your parents do?
My mother was a bookkeeper in New York Garment District. My father was a manufacturer of fur coats.
Of fur coats. And as parents, would you say they were strict? Just wondering.
My mother was very strict.
She was.
My father spoiled me.
And what did you like to do as a girl hanging out with other kids in your neighborhood? What types of games, and did you ever get into mischief? Were you a good girl?
Games first. Jump rope, stoop ball, mischief, climbing garage roofs. You could go, the way the neighborhood was, you could go from one garage to the other. I don't think that my parents were very happy about my doing that. And then later, there was skating and bicycle riding. And when the weather was warm, going to the beach in a place called Coney Island in Brooklyn.
How would you get there? How'd you get to Coney Island?
Sometimes by bicycle, sometimes by bus.
In my reading, I mentioned some classes at school that you were good in and some that you were less good in. I didn't get to talk about home ec, that is, sewing and cooking class. You were required to take sewing and cooking class as a girl, weren't you?
All the girls were, yes.
Did the boys take sewing and cooking?
Oh, no. The boys took shop. The boys worked with saws and they made things out of wood. And the girls made chocolate pudding. Which one time, instead of reaching for the sugar, I reached for the salt.
No.
And we had to eat, whatever, at the end of the class, we had to eat whatever we made.
Well, I was going to ask, how did that go for you? But I think you just told us how that went for you. Also, I know that you enjoyed, when you were a girl as well, music. I know that you very much enjoy opera today, and I also understand that you were introduced to opera at a young age, about the age that you children are. But in school, there was no opera class. So will you tell us about your chorus class and your participation there?
Yes.
Yes.
In that class, all of the children were divided into two groups. And one group was called the Robins, and the Robins could sing. And the other group were called the Sparrows, and the Sparrows were told never to sing out, only to mouth the words.
Did you follow that rule?
In the chorus class, I had no choice but to do it.
Did you ever sing just for pleasure for yourself
Oh,
after
yes.
you were told you were just a sparrow?
And in the shower,
Ah.
and in my dreams.
And
But I should say that I did play the piano, and then I also played the cello, which is a very nice instrument, so I could be in the school orchestra.
and when you were, well, a little older, maybe in junior high or high school, what other activities did you participate in? So you were in the school orchestra. Did you have any after-school activities?
Yes, I was what we called a twirler. Do you know what a baton is? Have you seen them at sporting events? So I went to every football game, and at halftime we twirled our batons.
You twirled. Were you good at it? Were you a good
Yeah,
twirler?
I was pretty good at it, yeah.
Justice Ginsburg, when you went on to college in the 1950s, many people assumed that girls were there only to find husbands. What was that like, knowing that that's what a lot of people around you thought when they saw you in college?
Well, I went to a school in New York State. It was called Cornell University. And in that school, there were 4 boys to every girl. So yes, that was a school where parents would send their girls, because if you couldn't find a husband at Cornell when you, 4 to 1, you were hopeless.
You did meet a young man there named Marty Ginsburg. Did he also think you were in college to find a husband?
Maybe he was in college to find a wife. But anyway, one of the reasons I loved him so much is he cared that I had a brain. And so we were very good friends. We talked about everything. He would ask me what classes I was taking, and then he would sign up for the same classes. Something I didn't know then, but I soon found out, I already told you that cooking was not my strong point, but my husband was a great chef.
So who did the cooking in your
So
family?
it started out, I was the everyday cook, and my husband was the weekend and company cook. I was never allowed to cook for guests. I had one cookbook, it was called The 60-Minute Chef, and that meant nothing took longer than 1 hour from the time you got home till the dinner was on the table. I had 7 things that I made, and when I got up to number 7, we went back to number 1. So my daughter, when she was about high school age, noticed an enormous difference between her daddy's cooking and her mommy's cooking. And she decided Daddy should be the cook every day, not just on weekends. And so it has been now for, well, he died in 2010. But my daughter, because she was responsible for my husband taking over the kitchen, now comes once a month to cook for me. And she fills the freezer with food, and then when the supply is finished, she comes back and cooks some more.
That's a very nice thing for a daughter to do. Is she a good cook too?
Yes, she learned from a master.
I'll add that Justice Ginsburg's daughter, Jane Ginsburg, is also a professor at Columbia Law School. So she cooks, and teaches law, and does a few other things. So today, things have changed from when you were in college more and in high school and younger. More people understand that girls and boys both go to school to learn, to be able to grow up to do interesting work, and to take control of their own lives as adults because they have an education. But Justice Ginsburg, what would you like the students to learn or to understand from your own less than equal experience as a girl and young woman?
I would like students to know that they can be free to be you and me. That is, free to do whatever you have the talent and are willing to work hard enough to do. That there are no closed doors. So it used to be, you heard Debbie tell you that there was a time when women were not allowed to be pilots in planes. Men were not allowed to be nurses. Now, there are no such restrictions anymore. So a girl can grow up thinking, whatever I like to do, if I'm willing to work hard enough to achieve the learning that I need to do it, I can do it. And nobody will say, as they often said to me, we really don't want to have any lady lawyers in this place.
Well, you became a lady lawyer, and you specialized in cases where you were fighting against unequal treatment of men and women, girls and boys. And in the cases you brought, you argued to judges that a person's choices shouldn't be limited just because she happened to be born a girl, happened to be born a boy. Can you tell us why you felt and still feel, I assume, so strongly about this? Tell us why, and also, if I can make a twofer question here, tell us why you thought society had such rules limiting what girls could do.
I thought it was a tremendous waste of people's talents. I mean, boys and girls have a range of talents, and to say that boys can only do this and girls can only do that was just wasting the talent of a lot of girls who could do what boys were doing and boys who could do what girls were doing. So I thought everybody would be better off if people could do whatever it is that they have the talent to do. And it shouldn't matter whether they're a boy or a girl.
Why do you think those rules, those limitations were put on girls, for example? Why did society say, no, young Ruth, you shouldn't be a lawyer? or somebody else, you shouldn't be an airline pilot because you're a woman. Why do you think?
Well, some people said all those no's were to protect women. So they couldn't be pilots because that was a dangerous occupation. The important thing to understand that it turned out women were not really protected. Instead, as one Supreme Court justice said, they were in a cage that it couldn't get out to do what they wanted to do and were ready, willing, and able to do.
I started out talking about you as someone who has disagreed with unfairness and with discrimination and with inequality since you were a girl. So I would say that you are an awesome arguer. I think you're a champion disagreeer. So now I'd like to get back to that. In this way, Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia and you disagreed very frequently on legal matters. And students, I want to make sure you understand that Justice Scalia, who was one of the other justices on the court, sadly died last year. But when he was alive, the two of them, oh my goodness, they disagreed strongly on legal matters. Will you tell students first about the back and forth that went on between you and Justice Scalia? That is, did you listen to each other? Did you just show each other the hand and say, don't talk to me? How was that?
When Justice Scalia and I disagreed, and I wrote, say, the opinion of the court, and he dissented, or he wrote the opinion of the court and I dissented, my opinion was always much better in the end because he pointed out all the weak spots, and then I was able to fix them and make the opinion stronger. Justice Scalia was very good at grammar. His mother was a grade school grammar teacher, and his father taught Latin. So if I made mistakes in grammar, he would call me on the telephone, wouldn't tell the rest of my colleagues. He said, Ruth, you know, you really, you should have used plural here instead of singular. And then I would sometimes tell him, your dissent is so overheated, you're going to lose people that you might otherwise persuade if you moderated the tone. He didn't always listen when I said that.
He didn't always listen.
But I loved him and I missed him. One reason is he had a wonderful sense of humor. And he made me laugh.
So the two of you disagreed strenuously, but were great friends.
Yes.
Since we're here in a great library, and I know that you as a girl went to the library in Brooklyn with your mother, I want to ask, why was reading important to you as a child, and why do you think it's important for our students here, reading?
Because it opened vistas to me about faraway places and people who were different. My mother would leave me at the library, and I'd pick out 5 books to take home, and we'd check them out, and then bring them back the next week and buy more books. Some things that I loved that were not real, Greek mythology. You mentioned Athena, the goddess of wisdom. I loved to read about the Greek gods.
Well, I wonder, what is it about the Greek gods and mythology? Percy Jackson, you all, right? Weren't we talking about that before? What is it about that attracted you so?
Well, for one thing, there was more equality among the Greek gods with Athena, the goddess of wisdom.
Right. There was equality among the god and goddesses, huh?
Yes.
And I know that you have to read a great many legal papers for work, but do you find time to read for pleasure?
Yes, I wish I could do a lot more, but I always take home a lot of work from the court, a lot of reading to do. But the last thing I do before I fall asleep, if I've done a good job, I did all my homework, Then I get into bed with a good book, read a few pages, usually fall asleep before.
I think that's a good habit. Much as we love to read, a person cannot read all the time. I mean, sometimes one has to get up and move around. And you, Justice Ginsburg, are known to spend some time at the gym in the Supreme Court. You're an exercise buff. And I think the students would be interested in your exercise routine. Can you talk to them about it?
And tonight, I will meet we call him personal trainer, and we will spend an hour together doing all kinds of things, lifting weights, doing push-ups, planks, using the elliptical glider. I started working with a personal trainer in 1999, long before you were born. And you know, the reason I started was because I had been very sick. I had a disease called cancer, and when I was finally through all the treatments, I was not in very good shape. I was very weak. So my husband said, "You better get yourself a personal trainer," which I did.
So you've been exercising seriously ever since then.
Yes.
It's a long time. Now, I think I have time for a couple more questions before opening it up to you. So I have two final ones. And that is, what is the best advice that you can give us on how to react when someone argues with you by saying mean things, that is, attacks you rather than engaging or going after your ideas? What about when it gets personal, as arguments sometimes do?
My best advice is to tune out. Don't try to argue back. Don't try to be mean in return. That's not going to get you any place. So just try to use the good reasons you have to persuade people, and for people who don't want to listen, just tune them out.
And another question about advice. What is the best advice that you can give us for changing things in the world, as you have changed things in the world as a lawyer and as a Supreme Court justice? Well, we're not all going to be lawyers and Supreme Court justices, but what's your best advice for how we can change things in our own communities when we think that they are wrong?
Join together with other people who feel like you, because there's strength in numbers. If you just try to do things all by yourself, you're not going to get very far. You need a team to work with you to achieve what you think is important.
Thank you. Now, I could go on and on and on, but I don't want to tread on time that we've got for student questions. So may I open it up for student questions? And then if you don't have any, I'll just keep asking my questions.
It looks like we have them.
Shall I? So right here, yes.
Were you involved in the Women's Rights March?
Were you involved in the Women's Rights March, the one in January? Is that your question?
And I wasn't in the march itself, but I met with people who were in the march, and I had dinner with them the night before. But many people I know, my granddaughter was in the march. People who work for the government tend not to be in marches. But I thought it was a wonderful thing because it was so peaceful. There wasn't at all rowdy. There were no episodes of violence. They were just people, as I said before, who were on the same team standing up and saying women have a lot to contribute to this country, and don't shove them aside.
How about right behind you?
What year did you started the judicial branch?
What year did you start in the judicial branch? So
Oh,
when did you first
yeah.
become a judge?
I first became a judge in 1980. I was not on the Supreme Court, but I was on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit at the U.S. Courthouse on Constitution Avenue. I was there for 13 years, and I was appointed to that court by President Jimmy Carter, and then I was appointed to the Supreme Court by President Bill Clinton.
Right here, young man.
Was it your dream to become a Supreme Court justice?
Did I dream to become a Supreme?
Yes, that's the question. Was it your dream to become a Supreme
Uh-huh.
Court justice?
People of my advanced age, women who went to law school when I did, dreamed of getting a job in the law, any job in the law. There were no women judges. So it would have been an impossible dream. In fact, the first woman appointed to a federal trial bench was appointed by Truman in 1948. And there had only been one woman on a U.S. Court of Appeals. She was appointed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1934. And when she retired, there were none again. So it would have been, it could be something that was beyond the realm of possibility. In fact, I didn't dream about becoming a judge until Jimmy Carter became president. And the reason I started then is he looked around at the people who were judges in the United States and he said, you know, they all look like me. But that's not how the great United States looks. When he said they all look like me, he meant they were white and they were male. So he was determined to appoint members of minority groups and women in numbers to the federal bench. So he appointed about 25 women to the federal trial court and 11 to courts of appeals, and I was one of the lucky 11.
Yes.
Why did you want to become a Supreme Court justice?
Why did you want to become a Supreme Court justice?
Because I think it's the best and the hardest job a law-trained person can have. We have no cases that are easy, because most of the cases that we hear are cases where other courts, I better get myself another constitution, this one's falling apart.
You used that one up.
Yeah. So, my job is do a lot of reading, a lot of thinking, a lot of writing. It's hard, but it's very satisfying when I finish an opinion and I can say, yes, that's good. I hope it will persuade the people who read it.
How about right here?
Did you actually write the little girl who dressed like a special message?
Can you repeat that?
Did you actually write the little girl who dressed like you a special message?
Oh, did you actually write the little girl who dressed like you a
Yes.
special message?
Yes, I certainly did. Yeah. Her name is Michelle.
Michelle, for those of you who weren't familiar with this, dressed up for her school's Dress Like a Superhero Day as Justice Ginsburg. Here?
Did you always fight for civil rights of your Did you ever fight for civil rights to be a woman to be in the Supreme Court?
Did you ever fight for civil rights?
Yes. I certainly did, and I thought it was great that people were able to come to the courts and say, what is happening is wrong. And it doesn't fit with our Constitution. You know, one of my favorite things in the Constitution is in the 14th Amendment, and it's known as the Equal Protection Clause. So let me read it to you just as it is. It says, "Nor shall any state deny to any person the equal protection of the laws." And let me ask you a question in turn. The word equal becomes part of the Constitution in the 1868. The main part of the Constitution was written in 1787. Now, why do you suppose the word equal doesn't appear until 1868? Now, she has her hand up.
I think that it only appeared in 1868 because, like, people wasn't allowed to be like wouldn't go to school with white people or nothing, or they couldn't learn they didn't have a lot of books or nothing like the white people did, and they wasn't like equal. They couldn't go to school with them or nothing.
You have another answer to that? Or you have a question? Question. We'll take another, sure.
When did she become a lawyer, and how old was she when she became a lawyer?
How old were you, Justice Ginsburg, when you became a lawyer?
Oh, when I became a lawyer, let's see, I was 26.
Who hasn't asked a question?
Why did you want to stand up for equal rights?
Because I thought everybody should have a fair chance to do what they can do best. And I also thought about how I would like the world to be for my children. I have one boy and one girl. And now my grandchildren. And I have 4 grandchildren and 2 step-grandchildren. Some of them are boys, some are girls. And I want the world to give them a fair chance to do whatever they want to do if they're willing to do the hard work that it takes. And nobody should be able to say, no, you can't do this because you're a boy or because you're a girl.
Would you want your children to be a Supreme Court justice?
Would you want your children to be a Supreme Court justice?
Well, the chances that for anyone to be a Supreme Court justice are not large. There are only 9 of us, you know, and there are thousands and thousands of lawyers. So I want my children to do things that they can do well and that gives them satisfaction. So my daughter is a law teacher, and my son makes exquisite compact discs. He loves music, and so that's what he does.
Do you still work at the Supreme Court?
As soon as I leave you, I'm going to go right to my desk at the Supreme Court.
It's right across the street. It's right next door. Who hasn't asked a question? I'll let you choose. Will you?
Is it hard for you to get through all the cases that you had?
Is it hard?
Is it hard for you to get through all the cases that you have?
Yes, it is. It takes a lot of staying power, a lot of stamina, because sometimes I'm reading things to prepare for the cases that will be argued, and I fall asleep. And then somebody taught me a trick: hold a pencil, and when it drops, then you know you're falling asleep and you should wake up.
Right here, sir.
Do you have like a place where you like to work, you prefer to work when you're doing your job?
Do you have a place that you prefer to work when you're doing your job? And I imagine we mean either at the court or maybe not at the court. Where do you like to work?
Well, at the court I have a very nice office. At home I work in the bedroom, and I've always done that from the time we had a small apartment. So there's the bed, and there's a writing table, and there's bookshelves, and that's my favorite place to work. My husband used to work on the dining room table, and I worked in the bedroom.
Anybody else? I think there's somebody behind. I don't want to ignore the people behind you.
On your cases, the nine of the judges, including you, did you have to agree on the case or no?
Do I have to agree? 5 people have to agree in order for the case to be decided. So 5 people can agree, and the court will make a decision. But the 4 people who don't agree can write the reasons why they don't agree. And that's what's called a dissenting opinion.
Anybody on this side? We can stick with yes. We've got a microphone for you.
Did you break any world records?
Did you break any world records?
I can say one. I am the longest sitting Jewish justice. There have been in history 8 Jewish justices. And just this month, I am at the court longer than Justice Frankfurter, who is
Mazel tov. Who has not had a question?
Did you ever, were you in the Supreme Court when the Levings was in the Supreme Court trying to get their rights?
When the who was in the Supreme Court?
The Levings.
The Lovings. As in Loving against Virginia.
I was a lawyer at the time of Loving against Virginia. And I knew one of the lawyers that represented them, because the American Civil Liberties Union took their case to the Supreme Court. There's a wonderful movie called Loving about them.
Oh, back here, okay.
How long was you working at the Supreme Court?
How long have you been working at the Supreme Court?
Almost 24 years.
Okay.
Longer than any other job I've ever held. I was a law teacher for 17 years, Court of Appeals judge for 13 years, Supreme Court justice for almost 24 years.
So there's still behind you people I don't want to ignore.
What was your first case based on?
What was your first case based on? Maybe the first, well, either a first Supreme Court case or some other case that didn't go to the Supreme Court.
And the first case that went to the Supreme Court, where I wrote the brief, it was a kind of a sad case. It was a couple who had a young son, and then the mother and father didn't get on, so they got divorced. And the mother took care of the child when he was very young. But when the boy was a teenager, his father said, "Family court judge, give the boy to me because he has to be prepared to live in a man's world." His mother did not want the father to have the child, but the judge ruled in favor of the father. The mother sadly was right, because the boy became very sad, depressed. And one day he took out one of his father's many guns and he killed himself. So his mother wanted to take care of anything that he left behind. It wasn't much, a guitar, some clothes, recordings. And the father applied too to be the one to take care of whatever the boy had left. And there was a law in the state was Idaho. The law read, as between two persons equally entitled to administer a decedent's estate, males must be preferred to females. And Sally Reed said, that's wrong. Why must males be preferred to females? I can do the job of attending to my dead son's belongings at least as well. So that was the first case that I briefed, and the Supreme Court decided that unanimously in the mother's favor.
I believe we have run out of time, I'm afraid, and I just want to say, other than thank you to all of you for your excellent attention and your good questions, and of course thank you to Justice Ginsburg, thank you to the Young Reader Center. Did you all know that it was Justice Ginsburg's birthday yesterday? Happy birthday.
Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.